Okay, we are recording. I'm going to keep letting some people in. So welcome. You are at Thursday Tidbits, our Lunch and Learn series for staff and faculty. Just a reminder, this is only a 30-minute lunch and learn. So we're just giving you a tidbit of information, and then whoever is going to be the speaker at each tidbit, you're welcome to get in contact with them and get more information as always. A few housekeeping things. Since UCO does not have the webinar feature, if you'll make sure that you'll just mute yourself and also turn off your camera, since we are recording, these do get uploaded to our YouTube channel. So to limit distractions and we can focus in on who is talking whenever it's uploaded. At the end, we will have an opportunity for you all to have a discussion and to ask more questions if you would like. I'm Carly Dethridge. I work in the Office of Health Promotion here on campus within the Center for Counseling and Wellbeing. We do health education all across campus for students. Today, if you saw from the sign up that we are talking about consent and porn literacy. Again, we were supposed to have a guest speaker, but she isn't here right now. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about consent and Broncho Bystander as far as what that looks like here on campus and the role that we can play as bystanders and to help with prevention on campus. If you all have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box, or you're always welcome to unmute and ask as well. In the chat box, you should also be able to see, I'm putting it back in there now, there's a sign-in sheet. So if you're here wanting to get credit for the Pedagogy Institute, please make sure that you fill out that form. Okay. Well, we will get started. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So here at UCO, we do what is called our Broncho Bystander training. It's based off curriculum from Bringing in the Bystander. And we typically give this to students, talking about how they can be active bystanders. But I'm curious from you all, what do you all think, or how would you define a bystander? Feel free to unmute, or you can type in the chat box. Anyone have any ideas? What is a bystander? Okay, witness to an event. Any other guesses? Someone who's watching but not helping. So that kind of brings me to my next question. Are bystanders typically viewed in a positive way or a negative way? Looks like could be both. I would say negative. Click my slide. I think it depends, right? Oh my goodness, now my whole slideshow is going. So typically, I think a lot of people initially, when they think of a bystander, we think of a person who is just standing by and not doing anything. And a lot of times that comes with a negative image of a bystander. And what we really encourage in our trainings is for students, staff, and faculty to be a positive or an active, and some trainings even call it a pro-social bystander. So somebody who is taking action, who is witnessing an event happen that could lead to damage or violence, and by their presence can have the opportunity to intervene. And we all want to be people who intervene, but we also want to remember that we want to intervene safely and also not getting involved in the violence as well. Okay, so there are different reasons why people don't intervene. And if you can even take a moment to think about a situation that you have maybe witnessed, and maybe you did or didn't intervene in that situation. And as you're thinking about this situation and whether or not you did intervene, think about if you did, why, what prompted you to intervene, and if you didn't, what kept you from intervening. And our intention is not to place judgment or blame on anybody for not intervening in the past, but we want to empower people to have the skills moving forward to intervene. And a lot of times when we think about situations, we often think about very dramatic, violent situations where intervene or could intervene. But we can also intervene in our daily conversations when we hear people making inappropriate jokes, sexist jokes, racist jokes. Those are all opportunities that we can be a bystander. But people don't intervene for a variety of reasons. So one of those is diffusion of responsibility. So often whenever we see a situation happening, it's easy to assume that somebody else is going to intervene, or maybe somebody is better trained to intervene, or maybe somebody knows the victim or potential victim better than we do. And so they are the person that should be intervening. There's also conformity. And we as humans want to keep our relationships that we have. And sometimes if there's a whole group of people and a situation is happening and nobody else is reacting in the same way that we feel like we should react in that situation, it can feel awkward and uncomfortable. And so to preserve those relationships and not be the awkward person out, we just go with what the group is doing. And then there's also ambiguity. So sometimes it's just really unclear what is going on in the situation, if this is a situation that needs intervening, and also how do we intervene? And then obedience to authority. So when we're talking with students about this, it's a really unique situation on a college campus because I think a lot of times students feel like everybody is a perceived authority figure on campus, professors, staff, juniors and seniors if you're a freshman. So there's lots of perceived authority figures on campus, people who have maybe been in an organization that they're a part of longer. And so being mindful of how we interact and even our role in the classroom when maybe a conversation has gotten out of hand, how we can take that opportunity to set an example and to model good bystander practices for students. So these are some statistics that come from colleges across the nation that give us a view of what relationship and sexual violence looks like on a college campus. Currently, we are working on getting new data from our students about violence and sexual behaviors through the National College Health Assessment. We do it every 2 years. So this spring, we're getting new data from students. And that really helps us get a snapshot of students' experience and behaviors so that we can be intentional with the programs that we're doing. And I'll let you kind of read through these. I'm going to see what someone said in the chat box. I'm curious from you all, do any of these stand out to you as shocking statistics or any that you want to talk about a little bit more? what we hear a lot from students is they're often shocked by this statistic over here that only 2 to 10% of rape reports are false. And a lot of times students, and I think even for us, it seems like that number is a lot higher. And so in thinking about why do we feel like that number is so much higher, we'll think about what we see in movies and TV shows and music, right? It's often portrayed that reports of rape or sexual violence are often false or have an ulterior motive with them, and that's just not the case. Seeing some stuff come through in the chat box. False reports of rape frighten me. Yeah, and they're not the norm, right? They do happen, but they're not the norm. Okay, so we'll keep moving on. Relationship violence is something that our students are experiencing here on campus, unfortunately. I don't have my notes in front of me, but based on the 2019 NCHA data, we've got at least 2% of our student population who a survey who said that they were in an emotionally abusive relationship. And then I want to say about 14% of them said that they were in a physically abusive relationship. And I think it's important here to remember that physical abuse is not the only type of abuse. We've also got emotional, economic, and relationship violence is really, I mean, all of this in reality is impactful for our students. We know that if they're not well outside the classroom, they can't be well inside the classroom. And so I'd encourage you to look out for warning signs and to reach out to your students and let them know that they've got resources here on campus. We know that right now during COVID, and while a lot of people are at home, relationship violence has escalated. And so even just on your D2L, just go ahead and plugging in, hey, did you know, here's some campus resources for you. Here's the domestic violence hotline. Here are resources, and I'm happy to get you connected to those if you need them. Okay. So at UCO, we define consent as permission. It can be a word or action. It is knowing, voluntary, and clear, mutually agreed upon. And we like to also encourage students that they want to make sure they're getting an enthusiastic yes, and that silence does not equal consent. And when we're talking about a word or action, we try to also make very clear that yes, actions, there can be actions that indicate consent, but we know that students are engaging in casual sexual relationships and also might be hooking up with people that they don't know super well. And so we always put it to the students, if you're in a new relationship or casual hookup, there are things that you don't know about that person. And one of them might be their nonverbals. And so when you're engaging in any sort of area that needs consent, making sure that you're getting that verbal consent is really a great way to make sure that your partner's okay, you're okay, and everything is on the up and up. And also having that conversation around media and what kind of pictures that we're sharing as well. Not everybody uses their phone in the same way. And so opportunities and how we can intervene. are what we call the 4Ds. And so we encourage people to really use what speaks to them and their personality style. If you're not a direct person, but you feel like you could easily create a distraction by spilling your drink or singing loudly, do that. Do what feels good for you, because intervening either way is going to feel hard and sometimes awkward. And so picking what skill set works best for us is going to ultimately serve us in the end. So we can directly call it out. I'm also wondering if you all can think of examples maybe in the classroom, how you can use these Ds in those scenarios. Part of being a bystander is also making sure that we're de-escalating the situation, not escalate the situation. So using I statements and not putting the blame on somebody else. You're doing this, you said a terrible thing, using I statements. I feel like that was inappropriate. Delegating, so calling somebody in to help us as well. Calling somebody out specifically, so not just saying, hey, somebody get some help, because then diffusion of responsibility, nobody's gonna help. So trying to say, you in the red shirt, you in the blue hat. Obviously distraction, and then delay. I think this is a area that a lot of us as staff and faculty fall into, is the delay. We're not in the situations where students are. We're not at parties where they're at. So we're often hearing about things happening after the fact. And so again, letting students know that you know about resources on and off campus, just going ahead and putting those in your D2L shell, or getting them connected with the counseling center if they disclose something to you, and also making that Title IX report. As for right now, we are still all considered responsible employees or mandatory reporters. So if a student does disclose to us, we do have to report it to Title IX. And if you're ever concerned about a student, but not exactly sure what the situation is or what's going on, you can still put in a student of concern report, and you can just search that on the UCO website. And there are people on the other side of all these forms and reports checking those out. And if you're not sure what's going on with the student, but you're feeling concerned about them, somebody still will check in with them. And as the counseling center, if you're ever unsure, you're in a situation or not sure what to do with a student after they've told you something, we're happy to help consult and lead you in the right direction on that as well. So staff and faculty, we've already talked about a little of this throughout. So education and modeling. So when you've got an opportunity in the classroom or in a training or at a campus event, whenever we get to do those again, to model being an active bystander, or even in the community as well. And also continuing to educate yourself, responsible employee, so reporting when you need to do so, knowing the resources. So the Center for Counseling and Wellbeing is a free resource for students if they are not sure if they want to make a report yet. They're always welcome to come and talk about reporting options and what that looks like with the Center for Counseling and Wellbeing. Talking early, so again, putting it out there that you know this is something that's impacting students, or even letting them know about the bystander trainings happening on campus, or even violence prevention programming that they can attend as well. And then these are some more of the on-campus resources. You are welcome to take a picture of this slide. We also have created this resource wheel. So it's got on-campus and off-campuses, advocacy, reporting, and other supports. And we're happy to send that to you all as well. I put this for my Healthy Life Skills class in the D2L shell, just so they can have all the resources right there at their fingertips. Okay. Well, that was our tidbit of information. Do you all have any questions, comments?
I know that Carly asked me maybe to speak a little bit to a couple experiences that I've been involved with. So obviously my name is Amy, and I teach in the department that basically provides resources and instructors for the Healthy Life Skills course, and which is a core course that majority of our students take either here or, or transfer it in someplace else. But obviously the ultimate goal of Healthy Life Skills is to speak about wellness and independent wellness, personal wellness. And one of those topics that comes up is the sexual health topic. We hit on several things for 2 or 3 days, but we definitely spend time talking about the bystander, kind of how to go about doing things. But I think one of the biggest challenges, at least for us as instructors, and speaking about consent and a lot of these things I feel like are sometimes very new or pretty private for students. Maybe it kind of depended on how you were educated before you came to college. Maybe you didn't get a lot of education in regards to sexual health, so you feel really new at it. Or maybe some of the information that you did get about it, wasn't super good. And so you're sitting in our classrooms and we're going over this topic who we know is really important, but I also feel like it's so brand new for a lot of our students, and just taking all the information in can be pretty challenging, I feel like. And so, we try to do a decent job of getting information out there, but like, Carly mentioned, there's all kinds of resources. I believe her department, the counseling department, there's lots of resources on campus. And I think ultimately we want students to feel safe and comfortable that they can come speak to either a Healthy Life Skill instructor or somebody that we could connect them with, for further questions or, maybe additional information. And I think as an instructor, one of the greatest challenges is the fact that oftentimes this is a sensitive, very personal, topic. And so, I even find myself, as Carly's talking about all these great bystander things and different ways and approaches, it can still be a really frightening or scary situation to get into, to want to talk about some of these topics, again, because they're so sensitive and personal. And sometimes getting through that is the first step, right, before we can actually do it. So I hope you know that as instructors, we're trying to really always add or speak about things that we think are viable to you as students, but we know it's ever-changing landscape too. And again, I think it's really about feeling safe and feeling like you can speak to somebody or have the courage to speak up when necessary, like Carly speaks about when it comes to these topics. We want you to know that you don't have all the answers. There's no way, right? But having the conversation is really critical.
Yeah, thanks so much, Amy. And you're working on, right, getting a training for staff and faculty to better feel equipped to have conversations with students, right?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is, and when we hire people to teach healthy life skills, there are all these topics that are involved in this one course. Obviously, sexual health is just one of those topics, but we find that when we hire individuals, they also too bring in some preconceived notions or opinions about sexual health. And oftentimes we're also trying to get that teacher to feel safer about this topic, in addition to actually educating those students inside the classroom, which I think brings a whole nother, different points that we have to work through. And so, yes, I think one of the challenges from the, curriculum in this course is to try to constantly update or constantly educate our own instructors about different ways to approach this subject, so that they feel safer and more informed about the topic as well. So it's an ongoing process, but definitely something that we are pretty passionate about.
Staff and faculty, we know too that you all have a lot on your plate. And so maybe you don't feel comfortable having some of these conversations with students, but they do see you often as a trusted resource and a source on campus. So I think some of the most important things, if you're like, I wouldn't even know where to begin in this conversation, I think is just to really hear the student out. Sometimes students really just want to be heard, especially right now when they're not really interacting with a ton of people. So just hearing them, and then also connecting them with the resources on campus. You can never, or even off campus, you can never go wrong with saying, hey, thanks for sharing that with me. That took a lot of bravery. And here's a resource if you want more information, or if you are wanting to talk to somebody a little bit further about that. I don't think you can go wrong. I've seen in the chat a lot of you asking for that final slide with all the resources, and I will definitely send it to you afterwards. And I also put again in the chat box. If you haven't signed in or if you didn't see it earlier, you should see a Qualtrics link in your chat box now so that you can sign in for being here today. And those of you who messaged me specifically about the slide, I'll make sure to get that to you. Amy, did you have anything else you want to add or any other questions that you all have? We're at 12:30 right now, so I want to be mindful of your time.
No, I think I would just support what you're saying, Carly, and the fact that, you know, just like I mentioned earlier, not only do students sometimes it takes them to be brave to come out and talk about it, it also is something that our instructors deal with, right? Of the right approach and what's the best way to go about doing that. And I think that's our job, is to stay educated about that. And then if we're not sure, to don't guess, right? To make sure and guide students to the right places. So I think the big key is what you said, is to make sure that they feel safe to a place where they can ask for help or for resources. And there's I was going to put that in the chat. There's tons of that on this campus, right here with Carly's group. I know with Julia's group, and I hope that students know that we're here for them, right? To support them in any way we can. It's just getting those resources out there.
Yeah. Amy, would you say that you're also a resource too, if people want to reach out to you?
Yes, I think, you know, and it goes back to, I'm not saying that some health life skills instructors aren't resources, but again, I think finding out that safe resource that's comfortable. And I would say that we have a lot of conversations with our instructors that if a student comes to them because they do feel safe, because it's been talked about in class, but the instructor is still not quite sure, I think our job is to educate those instructors on how to deal with that situation. But absolutely, you know, I'm someone who opens my doors a lot. We have a lot of instructors who feel comfortable, but that's what we're trying to work on, constantly educating and getting our instructors for that class, because there are a lot of them, to feel better about the process or know what to do and say when that situation arises.
Yeah. Amy also leads our sexual health connections group within Healthy Campus. So if this is something that you're passionate about, just creating a healthy campus, a healthy environment, you're welcome to join in on our Healthy Campus. There are other committees on there as well, but I think Amy's is kind of most relevant to this topic right now. So, okay. Well, with that, I'm going to stop recording. You all are welcome to log off. Thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you next week talking about eating disorders, and the week after that, guest speaker suicide prevention. Thank you all. Have a great day.